Welcome back. You're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Fortinet on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest is Sunny Bhagwalia, the Deputy Assistant Commissioner and Deputy CIO in the Office of Information and Technology for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Directorate at the Homeland Security Department. Now, Sunny, before break, we were talking about infrastructure, SD-LAN, SD-WAN, and how that's giving you guys some opportunities to not only deal with the bandwidth issues, but also move to configuration and security and all those things that come with this idea of a software-defined infrastructure. The other thing that I think our conversation and really your entire IT modernization efforts leading CBP and many other agencies down that path is how to find that balance between security but also flexibility. Yeah. Because as you said, your mission is today is different than tomorrow, which is different than the next day in terms of all your needs. So how do you find that balance of security and flexibility?
So I think, first of all, security needs to be built in throughout the process. You've heard this maxim, so we obviously really pay heed to that. But it's also about the data. You know, sometimes people start focusing on network perimeters and all that other defense in depth aspects, which is important, but really it's about the data. So, you know, looking at the high value assets, making sure that's protected is a key area, and then the rest of it, you know, making sure there's adequate protection for the rest, I think is sort of an approach that we look at. Now, keep in mind, in everything we are fully compliant with all the FISMA and all the other regulations. I think the thing I'll say is that while security is built in, we are also building privacy, and we're also looking at records management as well. So this is sort of unique in terms of we've got a records management program also instantiated, and looking at that aspect as we get to digital records at some point in the future, but kind of, you know, laying the groundwork for a policy that we published, and we have made a lot of improvements there. And Privacy Office, like I said, is fully with us, and you know, we're doing pretty well in that area and always looking to make sure that's there. So while security and privacy is sort of being built in, and then we're looking at records, on the other hand of it, we have to have flexibility because people need features and capabilities. So based on that, you know, stories and things that need to be done in agile development with sprints, we have many, many concurrent application developments going on. So we have 8 directorates right now that report to me, and along with you know, our CIO. And we have 3 senior level staff as well, and then you know, 4 or 5, 15 directorates, if you would. So out of the 8 directorates, 4 of them do application development. So each one of them has got, for example, supporting field operations or border patrol or AMO or trade, for example, right? So they need capabilities quick. So these sprints are done in like with 1 or 2 week deliverables out. You know, we have Jira boards, and we check our requirements, and they're sitting in cross-functional teams and getting that capability out. That flexibility is really important. Associated with that is connection to mobility. Some of them now want this delivered in mobile settings, so that because remember, we have a vast expanse of the country and vast supply chains that we look at in terms of trade, travel, and cargo and all kinds of stuff there. So I think from that, flexibility and security is absolutely important. So you have to make sure you have the faster ATOs, you have to make sure there's adequate security built in, and you have to make sure the data classification is proper, privacy is thought through, but at the end of the day, application features are done and deployed in like 2 week increments and done concurrently on many levels. And that's what we're doing. And I think that's what makes CBP a little bit more unique. I know there are a couple of other agencies who've extolled what their development is and development process is. This is one of the best I've seen in terms of what the teams are doing, and it's quite incredible what they're doing.
As you go through this IT modernization effort, and you know, as everyone says, it's a marathon, not a sprint in the least bit. Yeah. Security, as you mentioned, is top of mind, built in, not bolted on. We've heard that all before. Yeah. Do the changes of the way you approach IT modernization, whether it's through DevSecOps or whether it's through this idea of the changing nature of cloud or infrastructure, SD-WAN, SD-LAN, does that make this flexible but secure approach, I don't call it easier, but at least the path is not as arduous?
I'll just say first, you have to have a conversation, and you have to have more conversation in the room. So there's a lot of discussions where people are looking at the same thing together. A lot of times they'd be sitting in different compartments, and you just assume what the other person's looking at, but the communication wasn't there. We have more communication looking at the same thing together, and when people look at the problem together, someone says, well, I need this, or why do you need that? And so with that conversation, and I think...
and the difference is it's the mission that when you have those conversations, because for a long time, the IT folks got a bad reputation of saying, well, we just throw it over the fence and you guys do it, and there's no... But I think that's like, when I talk to CIOs, that's the biggest difference in terms of achieving that flexible security, is the mission people are much more at the table now.
Yeah, and I'll say that in our case, our 8 executive directors who are all SESs, they are very attuned to their customer sets, and that's what makes it different. The CIO as well here, Phil, is doing an incredible job in terms of making sure he's been there 26 years or 27 years, so he knows the business process inside out. And those relationships really matter. So not only are you looking at the executive leadership level talking to each other, you're looking at the first level executives also talking to each other, and then the staff talking to each other, and then all focused on common features that are due out in like 2-week increments. And that's why these things are working a little better. We also have security sort of embedded in these teams, so you can kind of take a look at that. For example, on the SecDevOps pipeline, we've published how we want to look at not only CI/CD, but other pipelines. How are these looked at, and try to get to a common even pipeline. So we're looking at that. Currently, we have a couple, but the point is these are all getting deployed faster and better. And we're even looking for opportunities within that pipeline to make it even better in terms of a SecDevOps 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 kind of configurations. And looking at potentially, could we outsource that? Could we leverage that as a service as opposed to us in the government doing it? Sometimes in the government, we tend to add a few more features that make things unique, but why can't we put that out there? So I think all of that is coming together, and then when that happens is why you're seeing these features. For example, sometimes when we see some requirements come in, we sort of check social media. We also get a requirement that comes from on high. We then implement it within days. So it's just something that is quite incredible to see, but it's only because there's this foundation of agile development in place, concurrent, and much focused on getting the capability to the mission owner and talking to them.
When you talk about DevSecOps, how much of a role does automation and orchestrations play in these days? I know I've talked to your partners, for instance, at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, who's been in a lot of ways ahead of a lot of other agencies when it comes to DevSecOps. Are you guys borrowing from them to add automation orchestration?
I would say we're also pretty good.
That's good.
Healthy competition, yeah. But I would say, for example, they're doing some things on APIs. It's pretty good, and they've shared that, and I think we can leverage some of the API concepts there. But I don't think we're no slouches. We're doing a lot of stuff that we don't talk about it much. It's not out there. But I'll say that my teams are running with, I think, with someone like XD Henderson, Rochelle Henderson doing something in BEMS, or Valerie Isbell doing for passenger, or Jim in targeting, or Rob McMullen in cargo. I'd put them again, CTO Tom Mills. Every one of these folks really doing a great job, but I think there's still opportunity to unify that.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, yes, we do leverage from each other, and there's absolutely no problem sharing and learning from others. So yes, I think the API concept that USCIS has is pretty good, and we can integrate a little bit better there.
You mentioned mobility, and mobility is such a big deal for CBP because so much of the mission area is, if you will, outside the office. The office is the border, the office is the port of entry, the office is where the cargo hole, if you will. How is mobility playing, and how are you using your IT modernization strategy and efforts to support that need, that growing need for mobility?
Yeah, so I guess the other thing is we want to make sure, so we've deployed a mobile device manager sort of on all our devices, so all the agents and all the civilian workforce and everyone else, they can all use a common MDM format that we can now see very quickly, and how that service is provided, and we are providing that service, and so that's been very, very good in terms of using AirWatch and those kind of capabilities. We are also deploying capabilities that are unique to what the agents need in terms of like a technical awareness kit, which allows them to see, where situational awareness of forces and where they are and those kind of capabilities. We also are deploying those features out in terms of mobile apps that are featuring to the citizen, and I think that is also another capability to allow people to even from remote register, their boats or whatever into the. So my point is that all of these mobility is very key to that. So the idea is that information should be made available for any mission and authorized user anywhere, anytime on any device. So I think that's one thing that we're doing. The other part of mobility, however, is security. So we want to make sure that endpoint security on that is maintained, and that's why MDM helps us. The other part of mobility is obviously, tablets, how they can help us do business process faster and look at that, and laptops. They're going to basically replace the desktop. And so we have also not only deployed Office 365, so one of the other directors, Ed May, is doing an incredible job. We sort of deployed Office 365 and Windows 10 with Chris Wurst is another exec who is sort of keeping the field operations going. So all of these, as I'm telling you, the team is doing an incredible job in making sure that you have the basic capabilities first available on any device. So we've completely migrated 75,500 folks to Office 365. And amazing. So that's been done. So now you have that capability, along with the mobile device manager that Bob's team did, along with in combination with our others, and then the support of that, and then making sure Windows 10 security is also there, right? There's a mandate that allows that. So when you have the operating system and all these are going in, that's really important. And oh, by the way, we also then have operational devices, which are considered the non-IT, as you know. And so that also needs to be updated, because guess what? All those sensors and everything else and all their other collection platforms will have information as well. So it's really busy, and it's quite amazing. I can tell you one thing, we get a few hours of sleep, and then and then this team is it's an incredible team. I was just so proud to be a part of such a team.
It sounds like we need to get you some help, a little more employees in there. We'll have to work on that, right?
No, I think the size of the mission is quite incredible.
That's why.
We have a pretty good team there.
All right, well, on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we can continue our conversation. You mentioned data several times, so we'll go down that path. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Fortinet on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.